You really have a very interesting, very diverse background. Tell us a little bit about how a person like you is running for election in politics in Japan, how symbolic that can be, and if we're going to see more and wider representation in Japanese politics from now on out.
No, thank you so much for having me. No, it's quite significant that LDP, the ruling party, that's been seen as more of the conservative force in Japan, has given me this nomination. I am of Uyghur heritage. My mother is also Uzbek, so I have a double heritage. I was born and raised in Kitakyushu, Fukuoka, and I lived there until I was 10, then lived abroad, then returned to Japan to work, then was in New York until quite recently. It's quite rare, as you say, to see a candidate like myself in Japan, and it's one of the reasons why I'm running. It is important that we have this kind of representation. Japan already is a diverse country. It's just we're not seeing that represented in politics, and it's something I would like to bring forward with my own candidacy as well.
What needs to be done? Are we talking about perhaps a quota system? What are some of the metrics that the Japanese government can actually take in order for a nomination like yours not to be so rare?
No, it's a very good question. I'm not quite convinced on the quota system per se, just because Japan's diversity is a little different from what you see in other advanced economies. When I talk about Japanese diversity, it's not only about candidates like myself who have very obvious diverse background, but it's also, Japanese people with different kinds of lifestyles, right? So in politics, we currently are overrepresented by men from a certain generation, older men who come from a specific economic and family background. I think it's important that all parties recognize that this is outdated. And I think what's needed is, as a democracy, for the people to speak with their votes, especially during this election and in elections going forward, that they are looking forward to seeing more diverse range of candidates. And I think the nominations we're seeing, not only in LDP, but in other parties as well this time, is a testament to that. It's an answer to people's voice that has pushed for more representation within our politics.
Arfiya, if you are successful, what would be your policy priorities going forward?
Sure. I have placed a very comprehensive platform based on Japan becoming a global leader. It has 3 pillars. One is being a global leader in national security, human rights diplomacy. As we're seeing this upcoming threat to international rule-based international order, it's really important as the second largest economy in the world and as the largest democratic economy in Asia, that Japan takes a stronger stance on democratic principles, human rights, and national security. So that's one. Second is politics that prioritizes life, that comprehensively includes climate change, urgent response to climate change, as well as preparing a better preparation for disaster and disaster and crisis response, as well as COVID-19 response that responds to both economic and pandemic needs as well. Number 3 is democracy and diversity. So that is the pillar we've just talked about. It's really bringing Japan forward, and by that I mean really a quantum leap in making sure that we become a country that is suited for the 21st century and that accommodates to the diversity that we already have. It includes, bringing young people into politics, bringing more women into politics, but also really having a comprehensive approach to protect women's rights here in Japan, as well as children's rights.
How much progress do you expect to be made meaningfully under the Kishida administration on these issues of equality, of women's issues, of representation?
I think we're making great progress. LDP has set a target to have 30% of candidates this time to be women. Having come back from the United Nations myself, I find 30% to be quite low. I think we need to get to 50, but this is a great start. And I think that the fact that they've set a target and have met this target is a symbolic show of support for more diversity and I think for more progress in this regard.
Does that diversity come from outside of Japan's borders? Should there be reforms made to immigration? The culture of openness when it comes to talent and immigration from abroad is not something that Japan has dealt with very well in the past, but is that now a necessity given the ageing demographics?
You know, the aging demographics part, I think that we need to look at much more comprehensively. I think, you know, it's many different areas, right? One is, I think, sure, we can probably solve it through immigration, but also through, you know, making sure that we have a society where all kinds of people can actually go to work. You know, part of the reasons why we have such a low birth rate is because it's incredibly difficult for Japan, in Japan, to be a part of a dual income family and still be raising children. So it's really about work-life balance. It's about infrastructure that supports both men and women to work. It's about infrastructure that supports all people to work and live in dignity. So I think that's one aspect of it. Now, when we come to immigration, I think, especially when it comes to asylum and refugee policy, I think we need to have much more consistency and much more just and human rights-based approach to that.